The scent of stale coffee and unfulfilled expectations hung heavy in the air of my parents' living room, a familiar aroma that always seemed to cling to family gatherings like a damp, suffocating blanket. So, another year, another project. My Aunt Carol's voice, a saccharine whisper laced with just enough condescension to prickle your skin, cut through the polite murmurs. She didn't even look at me, her eyes fixated on the shimmering display of her new diamond necklace, as if the sparkle held more interest than my very existence. My cousin, Brenda, perched beside her, snickered into her mimosa, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bouncing with feigned amusement. "It's not just a project. Aunt Carol," I began, my voice, despite my best efforts, betraying a slight tremor. "It's a foundational framework for national cybersecurity infrastructure, focusing on predictive analytics and AI-driven threat detection. It could revolutionize how we approach digital defense." My father, who had been meticulously adjusting his tie, finally deigned to glance my way. His expression was a familiar cocktail of paternal concern and thinly veiled disappointment. "Revolutionize, huh, honey? That's a big word for something that doesn't seem to have, a clear path to income." He emphasized the last word, letting it hang in the air like a final, damning verdict. My mother, ever the diplomat, offered a tight-lipped smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She patted my arm, a gesture meant to soothe but feeling more like a subtle restraint. "Your father just worries. Dear, you're so smart, so talented. It's just, we want to see you settled." Settled. That word was a recurring nightmare in my family's lexicon. It meant a stable, high-paying job in a respectable field like law or medicine, a fancy car, a sprawling house in the suburbs, and ideally, a suitable spouse, my chosen path. A deep dive into the arcane world of cybersecurity strategy and AI didn't fit neatly into any of their pre-approved boxes. In their eyes, I wasn't building a future. I was indulging a niche hobby, a prolonged, expensive deviation from the right track. "Remember Brenda's promotion at Sterling & Co.?" Aunt Carol chimed in, suddenly finding Brenda's existence worthy of her attention. "Senior associate in just 3 years. Now that's what I call a career. Practical, lucrative. They even gave her a corner office, didn't they? Sweetie." Brenda, finally looking at me, offered a smug, sympathetic smile. "It's just about knowing what you want, right, Aunt Carol, and going for it. No distractions." The implication hung heavy. My passion was a distraction, an unproductive indulgence. If you've ever felt like your dreams were being systematically dismantled by the very people who were supposed to uplift you, then you know exactly how I felt in that moment. It wasn't just about their words. It was the entire atmosphere they cultivated, a constant, low-level hum of judgment that chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling perpetually inadequate. Trust me, you won't believe what happened next. But first, hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with something similar, and drop your location thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. My journey into the complex world of national security and advanced technology began not with a bang, but with a quiet fascination from a young age. While other kids were playing with dolls or building Lego castles, I was dissecting old computers, marveling at the intricate dance of circuits and code. The internet, when it became widely accessible, wasn't just a tool for me. It was a vast, unexplored frontier, a digital Wild West teeming with both promise and peril. I devoured books on cryptography, network vulnerabilities, and the nascent field of artificial intelligence. It wasn't about the money then, or the prestige. It was about understanding, about building, about protecting. My parents, both successful corporate lawyers, viewed my early interest with a mix of bemusement and apprehension. They encouraged my academic pursuits, certainly pushing me towards Ivy League schools, but always with the caveat that these were merely stepping stones to a real profession. My undergraduate degree in computer science was acceptable, even commendable, but my decision to pursue a master's in cybersecurity policy, and then, more radically, to immerse myself in independent research on AI-driven strategic defense systems, was met with increasing resistance. You're going to spend your life in a basement, aren't you? Dears. My mother would lament over Sunday brunch, stirring her latte with an air of profound sadness. Talking to machines. What kind of life is that? It's vital work. Mom. I'd try to explain, my voice growing hoarse with frustration. The future of national security depends on it. We're talking about defending against sophisticated state-sponsored attacks, protecting critical infrastructure, preventing cyber warfare. My father would merely grunt, returning to his financial newspaper. Sounds like a lot of fancy words for not a lot of practical application. To me? Who pays for that? The government. They're slow. Honey. Bureaucracy. You need to be in a field where you can make your own money, be your own boss, control your destiny. The irony was not lost on me. They preached independence and control, yet they sought to control every aspect of my life, from my career choices to my financial decisions. Any attempt I made to explain the significance of my work was met with blank stares or thinly veiled skepticism. They saw only the lack of immediate, tangible markers of success, no large salary, no prestigious corporate title, no shiny office building. They didn't see the late nights fueled by caffeine and an unwavering passion, the complex algorithms I was unraveling, the simulations I was running, or the groundbreaking potential of my research. One particularly memorable incident happened during a family vacation to the Hamptons. My uncle, a gruff but well-meaning man who had made a fortune in real estate, cornered me by the pool. So, still playing with those computers, eh, kiddo? He boomed, his voice echoing across the pristine water. Heard you're working on something for the military, cybersecurity. What's that, like making sure their emails don't get hacked by some Russian kid? He laughed heartily, as if he'd just delivered a brilliant punchline. I tried to explain, patiently, the intricacies of the project. I was involved in a volunteer initiative with a small, independent think tank, developing advanced threat detection models that could identify patterns of foreign interference in critical national systems. It's about anticipating cyber warfare before it happens, Uncle, recognizing the subtle digital fingerprints of malicious actors and building preemptive defenses. He waved a dismissive hand. Sounds like a lot of hocus pocus to me. Listen, I've got a client, big tech firm, needs someone to manage their IT infrastructure. Good money. You interested? Get your feet wet in the real world. The offer, though well-intentioned, felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't about getting my feet wet. It was about abandoning years of specialized study and research to become a glorified IT manager. It was their way of saying, your passion is worthless. Come work for us, doing something we understand and value. I politely declined, citing my ongoing commitments, and the look of pity mixed with exasperation on his face was as clear as day. She's lost. Completely lost. These encounters weren't isolated incidents. They were the background music to my entire adult life. Every family dinner, every holiday, every casual phone call was an opportunity for them to subtly or not so subtly remind me of my perceived failures. My younger sister, Sarah, a successful investment banker, was their golden child. Her achievements were constantly lauded. Her career trajectory held up as the ideal. Sarah just bought her third property, my mother would announce at dinner, glancing pointedly at me, such a smart girl, always thinking about her future, her investments. The subtext was always loud and clear. Why aren't you more like Sarah? Why aren't you securing your future in a tangible way? The truth was, I was thinking about my future, and the future of my country, in a way they couldn't comprehend. My work wasn't about personal wealth accumulation. It was about contribution, about impact on a grand scale. But how do you explain the intrinsic value of preventing a catastrophic cyber attack to people who measure success solely by net worth and social standing? It was like speaking a foreign language, a dialect of ambition they simply didn't understand. The constant invalidation began to take its toll. Despite my intellectual certainty in the importance of my work, the emotional weight of their disapproval started to chip away at my self-esteem. There were nights I'd stare at my code, lines of elegant logic and complex algorithms, and wonder if they were right. Was I delusional? Was I chasing a phantom? A dream that would never materialize into anything they considered real? The self-doubt, a tiny, insidious worm, burrowed deep, whispering doubts in moments of exhaustion or frustration. I started avoiding family gatherings, inventing excuses. But even then, the calls would come. Just checking in. Dear, still working on that computer thing, Aunt Carol's voice. Have you thought about getting a stable job, something with benefits? My mother. Each call was a fresh reminder of the chasm between my aspirations and their expectations. The breaking point was slowly approaching. I was in the final stages of a major research project, a proof of concept for a secure, adaptive defense network that utilized quantum computing principles to predict and neutralize threats with unprecedented speed. It was cutting edge, potentially revolutionary, and I knew, deep down, that it could change the game. I had poured years of my life, every ounce of my intellect and passion, into this. But to my family, it was just another project that didn't pay the bills. I remember one particularly scathing conversation with my father. He'd called me into his study, the room filled with the scent of old leather and his expensive cigars, a sanctuary of his established success. He leaned back in his large executive chair, his gaze piercing. Look, honey, I love you. Your mother loves you, but we're worried. You're approaching 30, and you're still living like a student. No steady income, no clear career path. What are you going to do when we're not around to support you? I'm not asking for your support, Dad, I said, my voice tight. I'm working towards something significant. This isn't a game. This is serious, high-stakes research. He scoffed. High stakes to who some government wonk they'll just take your ideas and give you a pat on the back. Meanwhile, Sarah's building an empire. You need to be practical. You need to grow up. The words stung, not just because they were harsh, but because they came from a place of genuine misunderstanding. He couldn't see the value in what I was doing because it didn't fit his paradigm of success. And in that moment, something shifted within me. A quiet, simmering resentment began to harden into resolve. I realized then that their approval was a currency I could never earn because they simply didn't recognize the value of what I was offering. My path, my success, would have to be defined entirely by me. For me, the idea of seeking their validation, a constant loop of futility, began to recede, replaced by a nascent desire to prove them wrong not for their sake, but for my own. This was just the beginning. The weight of their words wasn't just a passing discomfort. It was a constant, suffocating presence, like a dense fog that permeated every aspect of my life. After that conversation with my father in his study, the subtle jabs from my family escalated, becoming more pointed, more frequent. It was as if a dam had broken, and now the flood of their disapproval threatened to drown me. I remember a particularly brutal family dinner, ostensibly a celebration for my sister Sarah's latest promotion. The grand dining table, laden with crystal and silver, felt less like a place of joyful gathering and more like a gladiatorial arena where I was the main act. My mother, beaming with pride, raised her glass. To Sarah, another rung climbed on the corporate ladder. We're so proud of her. Always striving, always achieving. Aunt Carol, ever the instigator, quickly chimed in. Indeed, and with that new bonus, she's already looking at upgrading her penthouse. Smart girl, securing her assets. Not everyone understands the value of a solid financial foundation. Do they? Her gaze, sharp and knowing, landed squarely on me. It was a thinly veiled jab at my lack of a traditional salary, the fact that my research, while potentially world-changing, hadn't yet translated into a six-figure income or tangible assets in their eyes. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my perfectly plated salmon, but my cousin Brenda, emboldened by the wine and the collective family energy, leaned across the table. You know, I heard about some of those government contracts. They take forever to pay out. If they ever do, and the security clearance's nightmare, wouldn't you rather be, like, building something real, something you can touch? You know, she gestured vaguely with her fork, as if to encompass all the tangible symbols of success that I apparently lacked. My brother, Mark, usually quiet, decided to weigh in too. Honestly, sis, are you still doing that quantum cyber AI thingy? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. Are you sure you're not just, procrastinating on getting a real job? Dad could probably pull some strings at his firm. Get you into their IT department. At least then you'd have health insurance. The laughter that followed was light, dismissive, and utterly dehumanizing. It wasn't malicious. Not overtly. It was the kind of laughter that comes from a place of comfortable ignorance, from people who genuinely believe they know what's best for you, even if it means tearing down your passions. It was the kind of laughter that made me feel small, insignificant, and utterly alone. I felt a surge of heat rush to my face, a familiar blush of humiliation. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell them that my sci-fi thingy could potentially save lives, protect national secrets, and safeguard the very digital fabric of their comfortable lives. But I swallowed the words, a bitter lump in my throat. What was the point? They wouldn't understand. They couldn't. Their worldview was too narrow, too focused on the materialistic markers of success. I am building something real. Mark, I said. My voice barely a whisper, but laced with a steel I didn't know I possessed. Something far more real and impactful than trading stocks or drafting contracts. My father cleared his throat. A warning signal. Now, let's not get heated. We're just concerned. Honey, your future. We want to see you happy and secure, like Sarah, or Mark, with his thriving consulting business. He even managed to weave in another comparison. This constant comparison. This incessant measuring of my life against their arbitrary yardsticks was a form of emotional torture. It wasn't just about my career. It seeped into every corner of my life. My single status was often brought up. Don't you want to settle down, dear, have a family? As if my professional ambition was somehow antithetical to personal happiness. My modest apartment was contrasted with Sarah's spacious condo. My thriftiness was seen as a sign of financial struggle, not a conscious choice. Have you ever felt like you were constantly under a microscope, every decision scrutinized, every deviation from the norm met with disapproval? It's soul-crushing. I started to dread family events, my stomach churning days in advance. My phone became an object of anxiety, every incoming call potentially another subtle attack. I found myself concocting elaborate excuses to avoid them, pleading work deadlines, imaginary illnesses, anything to escape the suffocating embrace of their judgment. The insidious thing about this kind of family conflict is how deeply it can embed itself in your psyche. Their words became an echo chamber in my own mind, late at night, when the house was quiet and my research presented a particularly challenging problem. Their voices would creep in. Failure. Delusional. Wasting your potential. It was hard to separate their critical voices from my own inner monologue. I started second-guessing myself, doubting my abilities, wondering if I really was just an impractical dreamer. The gaslighting was subtle but pervasive. When I expressed frustration or hurt, my mother would say, "Oh, don't be so sensitive. We're just trying to help. We love you," my father would add. "It's tough love, honey. We just don't want you to make mistakes we made." They would frame their criticism as concern, their mockery as tough love, making me question my own reactions. Was I overreacting? Were they right to be concerned? Was I truly failing them by not conforming to their expectations? The emotional toll was immense. I found myself increasingly isolated. My few friends from college were in demanding corporate jobs, their lives moving at a different pace. I felt like I couldn't truly share my struggles with them because they wouldn't understand the specific brand of family toxicity I was facing. They had supportive families, or at least indifferent ones. Mine was actively undermining me. It was during this period of intense self-doubt and emotional exhaustion that I serendipitously reconnected with Dr. Eris Thorne. Dr. Thorne had been my professor during my master's program, a brilliant, eccentric mind who had a reputation for seeing potential where others saw only chaos. He was a pioneer in strategic AI applications and had an uncanny ability to distill complex ideas into understandable concepts. I had reached out to him after hitting a particularly frustrating roadblock in my quantum computing simulation. Our initial conversation was purely technical, but as we talked, he sensed the underlying strain in my voice. He gently probed, not about my family, but about my general well-being. You sound a bit weary, my dear. Is the research getting to you? He asked, his voice warm and genuinely concerned. I hesitated, then, to my surprise, found myself pouring out some of my frustrations. Not about the family directly, but about the overwhelming pressure, the feeling of fighting an uphill battle, the constant questioning of my choices. I didn't explicitly mention my family, but I described the societal pressure, the feeling that my work wasn't valid unless it generated immediate, visible wealth. Dr. Thorne listened patiently, offering quiet hums of understanding. When I finished, he said, "Listen, my name. The path you've chosen, true innovation, rarely comes with immediate validation from the mainstream, especially not from those who prioritize comfort and conventional metrics of success. It's a lonely road, sometimes, but it's also the road less traveled for a reason. It leads to truly transformative discoveries." He continued, his voice firm but kind. "Don't let the noise of others drown out the signal of your own genius. People often project their own fears and limitations onto others. When they say you're failing, they're often just saying they don't understand your success, or they're afraid of what your unconventional path means for their own rigid worldview." His words were a revelation. They're projecting their own fears. That thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't about me failing. It was about their inability to comprehend my ambition, their discomfort with anything outside their narrow definition of normal. It was a paradigm shift. I had a mentor once, Dr. Thorne reminisced, his eyes distant. He used to say, "The only truly wasted potential is the one that's never tried, because of someone else's small-mindedness. You are on the precipice of something truly significant. Don't let anyone, especially those who claim to love you, talk you out of your destiny." That conversation with Dr. Thorne was a lifeline. It was the first time someone had acknowledged the emotional burden of my path, and more importantly, had reframed it not as my failing, but as a testament to my unique vision. He didn't offer to solve my family problems, but he gave me the intellectual and emotional framework to understand them. He helped me see that their mockery wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a reflection of their own limitations. Slowly, tentatively, I started to put up internal boundaries. When Aunt Carol would make a snide comment about my hobby, instead of feeling a pang of shame, I'd remember Dr. Thorne's words, their small-mindedness. When my father would press about my financial future, I'd remind myself that my true returns weren't measured in dollars, but in impact. It wasn't easy, and the self-doubt still crept in. But now I had a counter-narrative, a powerful truth whispered by someone who saw my potential, not just my perceived lack. This newfound understanding didn't magically stop my family from mocking me, but it changed how I received their mockery. It became less about me and more about them. It was a subtle shift, but a profound one. I was beginning to reclaim my internal landscape, piece by painful piece. The seeds of setting healthy personal boundaries had been planted, thanks to the unwavering belief of a mentor who saw beyond the superficial and recognized the spark of something extraordinary within me. The next step would be to translate this internal shift into external action, something I knew would be much harder, but I was finally starting to feel a flicker of hope, a nascent sense of empowerment that had been extinguished for far too long. The internal shift, the quiet realization that my family's criticism stemmed from their own limitations rather than my shortcomings, was a fragile seedling. It needed nurturing, sunlight, and irrefutable proof that my path wasn't a delusion. And that proof, thankfully, began to emerge, not from the hallowed halls of academia or the cutthroat world of corporate finance, but from the quiet hum of my servers and the intricate patterns on my screens. While my family continued to dismiss my work as a computer thingy or a hobby, I was deeply entrenched in the final stages of my quantum-enhanced AI defense system prototype. This wasn't just theoretical, it was a tangible, executable model designed to predict and neutralize advanced persistent threats, APTs, before they could even breach a network's perimeter. Think of it like a digital early warning system, but instead of just detecting a missile launch, it could foresee the intent of the launch, who fired it, and even predict its trajectory and potential countermeasures before it even left the silo. It was audacious, complex, and, I believed, revolutionary. I spent countless hours in my small, somewhat cluttered home office, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unyielding conviction. My walls were covered in whiteboards, scrawled with algorithms, network diagrams, and complex flowcharts. My fingers flew across the keyboard, the rhythmic click-clack a familiar symphony. It was a lonely existence, yes, but it was also profoundly exhilarating. Every line of code, every successful simulation, felt like a small victory against the tide of doubt that my family had so diligently tried to instill. My contact with Dr. Thorne became more frequent, evolving from a mentorship into a true collaboration. He was not just a sounding board. He was an intellectual sparring partner, challenging my assumptions, pushing me to refine my models, and celebrating every small breakthrough. He was the only one who truly understood the scope and significance of what I was attempting. "This isn't just a project. My name," he'd say, his voice crackling over video calls. "This is a paradigm shift. You're building the future of digital defense." His belief in me was a vital counterweight to the constant negativity from my family. The opportunity to showcase my work arrived unexpectedly. A small but highly influential cybersecurity conference in Washington, D.C., focusing on emerging threats and next-generation defenses, extended an invitation to present. It was an invite-only event, a gathering of top minds from government agencies, defense contractors, and elite research institutions. My initial reaction was a mix of excitement and sheer terror. This wasn't a family dinner. This was the big leagues. I spent weeks meticulously preparing my presentation, distilling years of research into a concise, compelling narrative. I rehearsed my talk countless times, perfecting every slide, every explanation. I knew this was my chance to show the real world what I was capable of, to prove the validity of my unconventional path. The night before my presentation, I called my parents. I thought, perhaps, this time it would be different. This wasn't some vague project. It was a prestigious conference invitation. "I'm in D.C. Mom and Dad," I announced, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "I'm presenting my research tomorrow at the Global Cyber Defense Summit." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then, my mother's hesitant voice. "Oh, that's nice. Dear, is it, like, a job fair? Are there recruiters there? Maybe you could network for something stable." My father chimed in. "Summits, presentations, that's all well and good, honey. But what's the outcome? Is anyone paying you for this? Are you making connections that lead to a regular salary, the kind that lets you buy a house, start a family?" The familiar refrain, the same questions, the same dismissive tone. It was as if they couldn't, or wouldn't, process any information that didn't fit their preconceived notions of success. I felt a wave of crushing disappointment, but also a strange sense of detachment. Dr. Thorne's words echoed in my mind their own fears and limitations. It wasn't about me. It was about them. "No, Dad," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the excitement I had initially felt. "It's not a job fair. It's about sharing groundbreaking research that could protect our nation. There's no immediate outcome in terms of a paycheck, but the impact could be immeasurable." I didn't wait for their response, merely mumbled a quick goodbye and hung up. The conversation, or lack thereof, served as a stark reminder I was on my own in this fight for validation. The next day, standing on that brightly lit stage, looking out at a sea of brilliant, discerning faces, a strange calm washed over me. All the years of family skepticism, all the mockery, all the internal battles with self-doubt, it all faded into the background. In this room, my work spoke for itself. I began my presentation, detailing the vulnerabilities in existing national cyber defenses, and then, with increasing confidence, unveiled my proposed solution, an AI-driven, quantum-resilient framework for real-time threat prediction and neutralization. I demonstrated live simulations, showing how the system could identify zero-day exploits, predict coordinated attacks, and autonomously deploy countermeasures with unprecedented speed and accuracy. The room, initially a polite buzz, grew quieter as I spoke. Faces that had been skeptical at the outset began to shift. expressions of curiosity morphing into genuine intrigue, then outright awe when I finished. There was a beat of stunned silence, and then a ripple of applause that quickly swelled into a standing ovation. I was stunned. It wasn't just polite appreciation, it was genuine, enthusiastic recognition from the very people whose opinions truly mattered in my field. Industry titans, government strategists, and renowned academics approached me afterward, their eyes alight with excitement. "Brilliant," one grizzled defense contractor muttered, shaking my hand vigorously. "Absolutely brilliant. We've been talking about this for years, but you actually built it." A senior official from the Department of Defense, a stern-faced woman with an impressive array of medals, cornered me by the refreshments table. "Your presentation was revelatory," she stated, her voice quiet but firm. "We need to talk, immediately. This could change everything." That night, I celebrated in my modest hotel room, not with champagne or a fancy meal, but with a quiet sense of triumph. The exhaustion was immense, but so was the elation. I had done it. I had proven, not to my family, but to myself, and to the wider world, that my work was not just valid, but vital. I sent a brief text to Dr. Thorne. Presentation went well. Standing ovation. DOD wants to talk. His immediate reply was a simple but powerful emoji. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Meetings with DOD officials, cybersecurity firms, and even representatives from intelligence agencies. They weren't offering me an IT job. They were discussing pilot programs, research grants, and potential roles at the highest levels of national security strategy. The word general wasn't used in a military sense, but in the context of strategic leadership, leading the charge in a new era of digital warfare. It was surreal, overwhelming, and exhilarating. I considered calling my family again, sharing the news, but then I stopped myself. What would I say? "Hey, Mom and Dad, remember how you said my work was just a hobby?" Well, the Department of Defense disagrees. They think it's revelatory. The thought filled me not with anger, but with a weary sense of futility. They wouldn't understand the significance of a DoD pilot program or a strategic leadership role in cyber defense. They would only ask, "How much are they paying you?" Or, "Is this a permanent job with benefits?" Their lens was too narrow, their values too misaligned with mine. The validation I sought had come from the outside, from the experts in my field, from the people who truly understood the importance of what I was doing, and that, I realized, was infinitely more valuable than any begrudging approval from my family. This external recognition was a crucial turning point. It solidified my self-belief, giving me the strength to internalize my worth, independent of my family's ever-present critique. It was a quiet triumph, unheralded in the family WhatsApp group chats or at Sunday dinners, but for me, it was everything. It was the proof I needed that I wasn't failing, that I was, in fact, succeeding on a scale they couldn't even fathom. The seeds of self-worth that Dr. Thorne had helped plant were now blossoming. Nourished by genuine recognition, this newfound strength would soon be put to the ultimate test, as the family's skepticism would inevitably clash with my rising professional star, leading to confrontations far more dramatic than I could have imagined. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. The quiet triumph of my DC presentation was a private victory, a cherished secret that fueled my resolve. But as the saying goes, the calm before the storm is often the most deceptive. My family, oblivious to the seismic shifts occurring in my professional life, was about to engineer their most public and humiliating attack yet. They had no idea they were setting the stage for their own reckoning. The occasion was my grandmother's 80th birthday party, a lavish affair held at a prestigious country club that my parents had meticulously organized. It was less a celebration of my grandmother's life and more a display of the family's collective success. A meticulously curated tableau of wealth and accomplishment. Relatives from all corners of the country were there, along with my parents' extensive network of friends and business associates. The air hummed with polite chatter, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the unmistakable scent of old money and new ambition. I arrived, dressed in an outfit I'd carefully chosen to appear both professional and approachable, hoping to blend in and avoid attention. My plan, as always, was to offer my respects to Grandma, exchange pleasantries, and then make a quiet exit before the inevitable interrogations began. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. Almost immediately, I was intercepted by my Aunt Carol, who steered me towards a knot of family members and some of my parents' particularly gossipy friends. "Ah, here she is," she announced, her voice a little too loud, drawing glances. "Our little genius, still working on her. Computer wizardry." The phrase was delivered with a wink and a patronizing chuckle, as if I were a particularly amusing child performing a parlor trick. My mother, sensing an opportunity, joined in. "Yes, she's so dedicated to her unique field. We just want her to be happy, of course. But you know, a mother worries about stability, especially when one is approaching 30 and still, well, navigating those early career stages." She gave my arm a squeeze, her smile tight with a performative concern designed for her audience. Before I could formulate a response, my cousin Brenda, looking particularly smug in a designer dress, interjected. "Oh, darling, you really should come work at Sterling & Co. We have a fantastic IT department. You could, help set up printers and Wi-Fi. It's so stable, and the benefits are amazing. Plus, you'd finally have a proper salary, for, adulting." She emphasized the last word, and a few people around us chuckled. The implication was clear. I wasn't adulting because I wasn't earning a traditional, hefty paycheck. My brother, Mark, sidled up, a condescending smirk on his face. "Brenda's right, sis. Dad even mentioned he could probably get you a referral. Think about it. No more ramen noodles, no more scrambling for grant money, just a solid, predictable career. Wouldn't that be a relief?" The circle around me tightened, their eyes glinting with what they believed was concern, but what felt to me like a collective attack. They weren't just questioning my career. They were questioning my entire life choices, my intelligence, my ability to function as a self-sufficient adult. It was public humiliation, delivered with a smile. I felt my face flush, a familiar heat spreading up my neck. My heart pounded against my ribs, and my hands trembled slightly. The old familiar feelings of inadequacy and shame began to creep in. But then, something snapped. It wasn't a sudden explosion of anger, but a cold, clear clarity. I looked at their faces, my aunt's feigned concern, my cousin's patronizing smirk, my brother's casual dismissal, my parents' performative worry, and I realized, with chilling precision, that they truly believed I was a failure. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to mold me into their image of success, to fit me into their narrow, conventional box. And they were doing it publicly, intentionally, to assert their supposed superiority. The shame, for a fleeting moment, gave way to a surge of pure, unadulterated anger. It wasn't a childish tantrum. It was the quiet fury of someone who had been consistently underestimated, ridiculed, and emotionally manipulated for years. And in that moment, I decided I was done. Done with their games. Done with their mockery. Done with their suffocating expectations. I began, my voice, to my own surprise, steady and clear, cutting through their self-satisfied murmurs. The quiet confidence in my tone made them pause, their smiles faltering slightly. "It's fascinating how you all define success. For you, it seems to be about the size of your bank account, the brand of your car, or the square footage of your penthouse." I looked directly at Brenda, who visibly stiffened. "And you know what?" I continued, taking a step forward, drawing their full attention. "There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what fulfills you, then good for you. But for me, success isn't measured by how much money I make, or whether I have benefits and health insurance from a job I despise." I glanced at Mark, whose jaw had gone slack. "My computer wizardry, as you so charmingly put it." "Aunt Carol," I said, turning to her, her face now a mask of surprise, "is about building a defense system that could literally protect our nation from cyber attacks, prevent infrastructure collapse, and safeguard lives. It's about contributing something meaningful, something groundbreaking. That goes far beyond a quarterly bonus or a corner office. My father stepped forward, his face reddening. Now, hold on. Honey, there's no need to get dramatic. We're just talking, concerned about you. Concerned, I scoffed, a genuine, bitter laugh escaping me. Is that what you call it? Dad, all these years, you've belittled my passion, mocked my choices, and undermined my confidence. You've held Sarah's achievements up as a cudgel to beat me with. And you've dismissed my dedication as procrastination or a hobby, all because it doesn't fit into your neat little spreadsheet of what a successful life looks like. My mother, her face pale, tried to interject. But we love you, dear. We just want what's best for you. Love, I challenged, my voice rising slightly, though still controlled. Is this love publicly humiliating me, constantly comparing me, suggesting I throw away years of specialized research to set up printers? I looked at Brenda, whose face was now a mixture of shock and indignation. Do you think I haven't noticed? Do you think I haven't felt the sting of your words? Year after year, the polite chatter in the room had died down completely. All eyes were on us. A hushed silence falling over the elegant country club ballroom. My family members, who had been so confident in their collective judgment moments before, now looked stunned, caught off guard by my unexpected defiance. I am not a failure, I declared, my voice ringing with newfound authority. And my worth is not determined by your approval, your financial metrics, or your outdated notions of what a real job looks like. I am building something extraordinary, something that matters, and I am proud of it. And from this moment on, your opinions, your mockery, and your condescending concerns hold no weight for me. My father's face was a mottled shade of red, a mixture of fury and embarrassment. That's quite enough, young lady, he thundered, his voice cracking slightly. You are embarrassing this family. Embarrassing, I repeated, a bitter smile touching my lips. No, Dad, you're embarrassing yourselves. You're so fixated on a narrow definition of success that you can't even see the groundbreaking work your own daughter is doing. You're so caught up in your outdated expectations that you've systematically tried to tear down my dreams. I paused, taking a deep breath, and looked at each of them, one by one. This stops now. Your constant negativity, your veiled insults, your attempts to control my life, they're over. I am setting a boundary. My career, my choices, my life are no longer up for discussion or ridicule. If you cannot support me, truly support me, then I need space. A lot of space. The words hung in the air, a declaration of war, but also a declaration of independence. My mother looked devastated, my father furious. Aunt Carol and Brenda stood rigid, their faces frozen in disbelief. I knew this wasn't a temporary truce. This was a fundamental shift. I had spoken my truth, loudly and unequivocally, in the very arena where they had sought to diminish me. With that, I turned, walked directly to my grandmother, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide, surprisingly understanding eyes. I kissed her cheek. Happy birthday, Grandma, I love you. Then, without another word, I walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind the stunned silence and the wreckage of their expectations. The adrenaline coursed through me, a thrilling mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was shaking, but not from weakness. It was the tremor of a seismic shift, the aftershock of a personal revolution. I had finally found my voice, and I had used it to draw a clear, undeniable line in the sand. This confrontation was terrifying, liberating, and utterly necessary. It was the moment I stopped seeking their approval and started truly living for myself. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that there was no going back. The path ahead would be solitary, but it would be on my terms. The silence that followed my departure from the country club was deafening. I walked out into the cool evening air, leaving behind the stunned faces and the shattered remnants of my family's carefully constructed facade. My hands were still shaking, but the tremor was different now. Less fear, more exhilaration. It was the aftershock of a personal earthquake, a moment of profound liberation. I had finally found my voice, and I had used it to draw a clear, undeniable line in the sand. There was no going back. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced, replaying every word, every defiant stance. A part of me expected immediate backlash, furious phone calls, scathing texts, but surprisingly, the initial silence held. It was unnerving. Like the quiet before a much larger storm, I knew they were processing, strategizing, trying to understand what had just happened. For years, I had been compliant, accepting their criticisms with quiet resignation. My outburst had clearly blindsided them. The next morning, the dam finally broke. My phone began to ring incessantly. First, my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a chaotic mix of hurt, anger, and thinly veiled manipulation. "How could you do that?" My name. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Your grandmother was so upset. We were just trying to help you. This is not how family behaves. Call me back immediately. We need to talk about this attitude of yours." Then came a text from Brenda. "Seriously, what was that you made such a scene? Do you think that's going to get you anywhere? It's just going to alienate everyone who cares about you. Grow up." Mark's message was more direct. "Dad's furious. You really screwed up. Apologize, now, or don't expect any more help." The old me would have crumbled under this barrage. I would have felt immense guilt, believed their accusations of being ungrateful or dramatic. But Dr. Thorne's words echoed in my mind. They're projecting their own fears, their limitations. This wasn't about me screwing up. It was about them losing control of their narrative, about their discomfort with my newfound independence. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and made a conscious decision I would not engage in their emotional warfare. I would respond, but on my terms, with clarity and unwavering resolve. I called my mother back first. Her voice was strained, still laced with hurt. "Finally, do you have any idea how upset your father is?" "Mom," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I understand you're upset, but I won't apologize for speaking my truth. I've listened to years of condescension and mockery, and I simply couldn't take it anymore. What happened yesterday was the culmination of years of feeling belittled and invalidated by this family. But we love you," she wailed, resorting to the familiar emotional blackmail. "Everything we've ever done was out of love. Love doesn't dismiss, Mom. Love doesn't mock. Love doesn't constantly compare you to others and tell you that your dreams aren't valid. I need you to understand that what you perceive as tough love has been deeply hurtful and detrimental to my self-esteem." "So what? You're just going to cut us off?" Her voice turned cold, accusatory. "No," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I am setting boundaries from now on. Any conversation about my career, my finances, or my personal choices that is not genuinely supportive and respectful will be immediately ended. If you can't offer genuine support, then I need space. If you continue to mock or belittle me, I will reduce contact. This isn't a threat, Mom. It's a necessary step for my own well-being." There was a stunned silence on her end. She had never heard me speak like this, with such conviction and resolve. The conversation ended without a true resolution, but I had made my statement. The confrontations with Brenda and Mark were similar, though shorter. Brenda tried to play the victim, claiming I had ruined Grandma's party. I calmly told her that my emotional well-being was not secondary to her social comfort. Mark's bluster about no more help was met with my simple response. "I've never asked for your financial help, Mark, and I don't need it. My path is my own." Each interaction, though difficult, reinforced my resolve. I felt a growing sense of empowerment with every boundary I articulated. The hardest conversation, as always, was with my father. He called me later that evening, his voice tight with controlled fury. "What you did yesterday was an unacceptable display of disrespect. Young lady, you embarrassed this family, and you insulted us in front of our friends. You will apologize." "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I respect you as my father, but I will not apologize for standing up for myself. I explained yesterday why I reacted the way I did. For years, you and Mom, and the rest of the family, have systematically dismissed my work and my choices. You've told me I'm failing, that my dreams are unrealistic, and that I need to conform to your idea of success. I am done trying to earn your approval. So this is it." Then he snarled, his voice rising. "You're throwing away your family because we want you to be successful. No, Dad, I'm choosing to protect my mental and emotional health. My success is not defined by your terms. My work is important, and I am pursuing it with everything I have. If you cannot respect that, if you cannot stop the constant criticism and mockery, then I need distance. I cannot have toxic influences constantly undermining me as I try to build my life." He was speechless for a moment, then sputtered, "This is absurd. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when your little projects don't pan out, and you realize how difficult the real world is." "Perhaps," I said, feeling a strange calm wash over me. "But that will be my journey to navigate, not yours to predict or dictate. My decisions are my own, and so are their consequences. What I won't tolerate any longer is your disrespect." I hung up, my hand shaking slightly. That was it. The line had been drawn. It was painful. Yes, the idea of estrangement from my family, even a partial one, was heartbreaking, but the feeling of liberation, of having finally broken free from years of emotional bondage, was far more potent. The subsequent weeks were tense. Family gatherings became awkward affairs that I largely avoided. When I did attend, I maintained a polite but firm distance. Any attempt to steer the conversation towards my career or finances was met with a swift change of topic or a direct reminder of my boundaries. "We're not discussing that, Aunt Carol. That's not something I'm willing to talk about. Mom?" It was exhausting, but each firm stand solidified my resolve and chipped away at their ability to manipulate me. During this period, Dr. Thorne continued to be a pillar of support. He didn't pry into the family drama, but his consistent belief in my work and his steady encouragement provided a much-needed anchor. "Keep your focus on what truly matters. My name," he'd advise. "The external validation will come, but the internal conviction, that's priceless." And indeed, the external validation was building. My meetings with the Department of Defense had progressed rapidly. They were deeply impressed with my prototype and its potential. What started as discussions about pilot programs quickly escalated into talks about establishing a new cross-agency task force and an unprecedented civilian leadership role to spearhead the integration of advanced AI and quantum computing into national security infrastructure. The terms they were using were astonishing: strategic initiative lead, visionary architect, critical national asset. They spoke of my work with a gravitas, an understanding that my family had never even remotely grasped. They weren't just offering me a job. They were offering me the chance to shape the future of national defense. The scope of the role was immense, the responsibility daunting, but the potential impact was staggering. It was the antithesis of everything my family had ever suggested for me. The irony was not lost on me. While my family was busy trying to pigeonhole me into an IT support role, the highest echelons of government were recognizing me as a strategic leader, while they mocked my projects. I was about to embark on a mission that would have profound implications for national security. The gap between their perception of my failure and the reality of my burgeoning success was becoming a chasm. This period of intense professional development, coupled with my deliberate detachment from family drama, allowed me to truly flourish. The energy I had once expended on seeking their approval or defending my choices was now channeled into my work, into building something truly monumental. I was no longer striving to prove them wrong. I was striving to achieve my own potential. The confrontations, difficult as they were, had liberated me. I was finally operating on my own terms, empowered and self-assured, ready for whatever came next. And what came next, I knew, would be something that no one, especially my family, could ever have predicted. The confrontation with my family had been a searing, necessary act of self-preservation. In the weeks and months that followed, their calls and texts dwindled, replaced by a tense, fragile silence. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but it was a much-needed respite from the constant barrage of criticism. This newfound quiet, coupled with the unwavering belief of Dr. Thorne, allowed me to dive even deeper into my work, focusing all my energy on the monumental task ahead. The discussions with the Department of Defense had rapidly progressed from theoretical talks to concrete plans. My quantum-enhanced AI defense system, once dismissed by my family as a computer thingy, was now being hailed as a potential game changer. The initial pilot program had exceeded all expectations, demonstrating an unparalleled ability to predict and neutralize sophisticated cyber threats, often before they even registered on conventional detection systems. My system could identify the digital signatures of state-sponsored actors, anticipate their next moves, and even counter their attacks autonomously, all at speeds previously thought impossible. The DoD wasn't just interested in implementing my technology, they wanted me to lead the charge. The role they offered wasn't a traditional military one, but something entirely new. Director of Advanced Cyber Strategic Integration. It was a civilian position, yes, but one that came with immense authority, a dedicated team, and a direct line to the highest levels of national security leadership. It was, in essence, a strategic command role, a recognition of my unique ability to bridge the gap between cutting-edge technology and real-world defense strategy. The unofficial term being whispered in the corridors of power was Cyber General. I spent grueling days and nights at secure facilities, presenting to stern-faced officials, collaborating with brilliant engineers, and refining the parameters of the new initiative. I was a whirlwind of activity, driven by a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my personal vindication. It was about protecting critical national infrastructure, safeguarding classified information, and ensuring the digital security of millions. The stakes were incredibly high, and I thrived under the pressure, the true value of my unconventional path finally being realized. The official announcement was scheduled for a press conference at the Pentagon. I had been prepped for days by a team of public relations specialists, drilled on talking points, and coached on how to handle difficult questions. They stressed the importance of my story, how a civilian with no traditional military background was stepping into such a pivotal national security role. It was meant to inspire, to highlight innovation, but for me, it felt surreal, almost like a dream. The day of the announcement dawned bright and crisp. I was nervous, of course, but beneath the nerves was a quiet confidence, born from years of dedication and the knowledge that my work spoke for itself. As I stood backstage, waiting for my cue, a sudden flurry of activity caught my attention. Whispers about a last-minute change, a special guest. My handlers looked flustered, but wouldn't elaborate. Then, the press conference began. The Secretary of Defense delivered an opening statement, his voice grave, emphasizing the escalating global cyber threats and the critical need for next-generation defenses. He then paused, turning to the podium. Today, he announced, his voice ringing through the room, we are here to announce a groundbreaking initiative, one that will fundamentally reshape our nation's approach to cybersecurity. And to lead this unprecedented endeavor, we have found a visionary, a brilliant mind whose innovative work has already demonstrated the capacity to redefine digital warfare. He paused, a dramatic beat of silence. It is with immense pride and confidence that I introduce to you the youngest individual in U.S. history to hold a strategic leadership position of this magnitude. The architect of our nation's future cyber defense. Please welcome, Director, my full name. The room erupted in applause. The flashbulbs popped. A blinding explosion of light. I walked out, composed, determined, and utterly overwhelmed by the moment. As I approached the podium, my eyes scanned the crowd, and that's when I saw them. My family, my mother, father, Aunt Carol, Brenda, and Mark. They were seated in the second row, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. They hadn't been invited. They must have seen the press conference announced on the news and decided to attend. Perhaps out of morbid curiosity or a desperate need to understand what was happening, their presence, initially a jolt, quickly faded into the background as I focused on the task at hand. I began my speech, explaining the critical importance of proactive cyber defense, the need for adaptive AI, and the vision for the new Strategic Integration Unit. I spoke with passion and conviction, detailing the technical intricacies of my system in a way that was both accessible and compelling. I wasn't just giving a presentation, I was articulating a future. Midway through my address, a journalist from CNN, her voice clear and authoritative, raised her hand. Director, my last name, she began. Your background is primarily civilian research, not military. Yet, the scope of this role and the strategic importance of your work has led many to unofficially dub you the youngest general in U.S. history. How do you respond to that unprecedented title, and what challenges do you foresee as you navigate this groundbreaking role? The words hung in the air, youngest general in U.S. history. It wasn't just a title, it was a public declaration, a national recognition of everything my family had mocked and dismissed. I felt a surge of emotion, a powerful wave of vindication that transcended any personal animosity. I paused, looked directly at the CNN reporter, and then, almost instinctively, my gaze drifted to my family in the second row. My father's face was ashen, his jaw slack. My mother looked utterly bewildered, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and something akin to fear. Aunt Carol's perpetually smug expression had dissolved into a mask of pure shock. Brenda and Mark looked like statues, frozen in a tableau of bewildered recognition. The title, unofficial as it may be, I began, my voice clear and steady, is a testament to the evolving nature of warfare in the 21st century. The battlefield extends beyond physical borders into the digital realm. The generals of this new era aren't just those trained in traditional combat, but those who can envision and build the defenses necessary to secure our digital future. I continued, letting a subtle, knowing smile touch my lips. My journey here has been unconventional. Certainly, I've faced skepticism, even ridicule, from those who couldn't comprehend the value or potential of my chosen field. They saw failure where I saw innovation. They saw a hobby where I saw a calling. My eyes briefly met my father's, and I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it shame, regret? I couldn't be sure, but the power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. But true innovation, I concluded, my voice resonating with newfound authority, often begins in the margins, away from the conventional pathways, and the greatest challenges often lead to the most profound breakthroughs. I am honored to serve our nation in this capacity, and I am confident that with dedication, foresight, and relentless pursuit of excellence, we can secure our digital future against any adversary. The applause that followed was thunderous, amplified by the weight of my words. Questions poured in, but the initial shock of the CNN question and my unvarnished response had visibly shaken my family. They sat there, exposed, their years of mockery laid bare by the glaring light of national recognition. They had said I failed. They had mocked me for failing. Then, the CNN called me the youngest general in U.S. history. The universe, it seemed, had a darkly ironic sense of humor, walking off the stage, surrounded by congratulatory officials and eager reporters. I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. It wasn't about gloating, not anymore. It was about knowing, deep in my bones, that I had pursued my truth against all odds, and it had led me to a place of immense impact and undeniable success. The public humiliation they had inflicted on me at the country club now seemed like a distant, pathetic attempt to control a destiny that was always meant to be far grander than they could ever imagine. The unveiling was complete. The world now knew my story, and so, finally, did my family. The aftermath of the Pentagon press conference was a whirlwind, both professionally and personally. My phone, which had been relatively quiet since the country club incident, now exploded with calls and messages, a chaotic mix of belated congratulations, stunned apologies, and thinly veiled attempts to reconnect. The news of the youngest general had spread like wildfire, a triumphant blaze that illuminated the stark contrast between my family's narrative of my failure and the undeniable reality of my success. My mother called first, her voice wavering, almost unrecognizable. "My darling, my name," she began, a practiced tremor in her voice. "We saw you on TV, CNN. It was incredible. We are just so proud. We always knew you had it in you. Dear, such a visionary." The sudden shift from dismissive concern to effusive praise was jarring, almost comical in its abruptness. I could almost hear her scrambling to rewrite the family history in her mind, to claim some credit for my journey. "Mom," I said, my voice calm, maintaining the boundaries I had so painstakingly established. "Thank you. It was a significant moment. Significant, it was monumental. Your father is just beaming. He's telling everyone at the club, "That's my daughter. Isn't that wonderful?" The urge to retort, to remind her of every condescending remark, every backhanded compliment, was strong, but I resisted. This wasn't about bitterness, it was about re-establishing the terms of our relationship. "It's a big responsibility, Mom," I said, sidestepping her attempts to bask in my reflected glory. "And I'm focused on the work ahead." She then launched into a flurry of questions about my new role, about the Pentagon budget, and whether I'd be making good money now. Her questions were still rooted in the same materialistic metrics, proving that while their perception of my status had changed, their fundamental values had not, I answered vaguely, deflecting any attempts to delve into specifics or to re-establish their financial oversight. The conversation ended politely, but hollowly. Brenda and Mark's messages were even more transparent. Brenda, who had publicly mocked my adulting, now texted OMG, my name. That was insane, I mean. Who knew? Right, you always were so, quiet about your projects. We should totally catch up soon. Maybe get coffee, I'd love to hear all about it. The subtext was clear, she wanted to leverage my newfound prestige for her own social currency. I responded with a polite but non-committal message, letting her know I was incredibly busy with my new responsibilities. Mark's message was a begrudging admission. "All right, sis, I'll admit it. I was wrong. Seriously, impressive. Dad's been bragging nonstop. Maybe we could grab a beer sometime. My consulting business could actually use some cyber general advice. If you're ever free." His attempt to pivot from ridicule to seeking professional favors was a stark illustration of their transactional view of relationships. I also politely declined, prioritizing my professional commitments and personal space. The most complex interaction, as always, was with my father. He didn't call immediately. Instead, he requested a private meeting, a formal summons that spoke volumes about his wounded pride and his desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. I agreed, choosing a neutral, public place, a quiet coffee shop, far from the familiar confines of his study. He arrived looking unusually subdued, his usual bluster replaced by a quiet tension. He ordered a black coffee, staring into it as if seeking answers in its depths. "So," he began, his voice rough, "that was quite something. Yesterday, quite something. It was?" I agreed, offering no further prompt. I waited, allowing the silence to stretch, forcing him to articulate his thoughts. He cleared his throat. "Look, my name," he finally said, meeting my gaze. "Your mother and I, we've always wanted the best for you. We saw a different path, a more traditional path to success. We worried, we worried you were wasting your potential. And your worries manifested as public mockery, dismissal, and constant comparisons to Sarah's financial achievements," I stated, calmly but firmly. "That wasn't concern, Dad. That was destructive. It chipped away at my self-worth for years." He flinched. Visibly, I suppose we could have handled things differently," he admitted. A rare moment of vulnerability. "We just didn't understand what you were doing. It was so abstract to us. Not like real estate or corporate law. We didn't see the tangible outcomes. And that's precisely the problem. Dad," I explained, leaning forward slightly, "you refuse to see beyond your own limited definition of success. You couldn't comprehend that impact and innovation could be more valuable than immediate financial returns. You judged me based on your outdated metrics. And when I didn't conform, you tried to cut me down." He took a slow sip of his coffee. "What you did yesterday, it was remarkable. The Secretary of Defense, CNN, youngest general. I never thought, we always knew you were smart, but this is beyond anything we imagined." He sounded genuinely awestruck, a tone I had never heard from him before regarding my achievements. "It always was beyond your imagination, Dad," I said, a faint, bittersweet smile touching my lips. "Because you never allowed yourself to truly believe in my vision. You prioritized your fears for my stability over my passion and my potential." He sighed, a heavy, defeated sound. "So, what now? Are you just done with us, with the family?" "No," I replied, softening my tone slightly. I'm not done. But things have to change. My boundaries are firm. I will not tolerate any more criticism, mockery, or attempts to control my life choices. Our relationship needs to be built on mutual respect and genuine support. If you can't offer that, then I will need to limit our interactions to protect my own peace and focus on my important work. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I understand, he said, a surprising humility in his voice. It won't be easy for any of us, but I will try. We all will, for what it's worth. I am truly proud of you. My name. You really did it. It was a small step, a fragile olive branch from a man who had rarely admitted fault. I didn't expect a complete transformation, but it was a beginning. I chose to accept it, not out of naive forgiveness, but out of a mature understanding that I could not control their past actions, only my present reactions and future interactions. The burden of their approval had been lifted. Now, I could decide what kind of relationship I wanted. If any, my life since that day has been exhilarating, demanding, and profoundly fulfilling. As the Director of Advanced Cyber Strategic Integration, I lead a brilliant team, working at the forefront of national security. My days are filled with high-stakes decisions, groundbreaking research, and the constant challenge of protecting our nation in the ever-evolving digital landscape. The youngest general moniker, while unofficial, has stuck. A powerful symbol of how unconventional paths can lead to unimaginable heights. I still have a relationship with my family, but it's on my terms. The boundaries I set are now largely respected. The mocking comments have ceased, replaced by a cautious respect, or at least a public silence. My mother often calls, eager to hear snippets of my life, careful now to offer only praise. My father, surprisingly, has become a quiet advocate, occasionally dropping hints of my work to his friends, a subtle shift from embarrassment to pride. Brenda and Mark still try to get favors, but I maintain my distance, protecting my energy and focus. The journey taught me invaluable lessons. It taught me that true validation comes from within, fueled by passion and purpose, not external approval. It taught me that setting healthy boundaries, even with family, is not selfish, but an act of profound self-love and self-preservation. It taught me that the people who truly care about you will celebrate your authentic self, even if they don't always understand your path. And most importantly, it taught me that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a necessary part of the journey towards it. My family said I failed. They mocked me for failing, but I listened to my own inner voice, pursued my own truth, and built a future far grander than anyone could have predicted. If you're out there, feeling undervalued, dismissed, or mocked for pursuing your dreams, remember this: your vision is valid, your potential is limitless, and your worth is not determined by anyone else's narrow perceptions. Stand tall, set your boundaries, and build the life you're meant to live. The world is waiting for you.